Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to check out a track today. It's a special selection. It's where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. If you have your own song you'd like to submit for special selection, you can find a link to do so in the description below. Today's comes at us from Heath. Hey, Bryan. I kind of felt like the last Funeral Doom song you reacted to just wasn't quite slow enough. So I present to you this. Skepticism, the March, and the Stream. So we're going to get into this. I've got my trusty app right here. Going to figure out what the the tempo of this is. Let's dive into this and see what Skepticism is bringing to the table today. Assuming we take these as quarter notes, we're looking at 37 BPM. Easily the slowest we've had on the channel. Really leaning into atmosphere. There's a dreariness to the very large drum and the gong, the chimes off on the side. And just this guitar tone maybe over here, just sitting between two notes, just kind of bouncing back and forth between them. What's really interesting is these chimes over here continue to shift. They're not on the beat, they used to be. They were in the middle of the beat last time, and this time they were just slightly off. Yeah, they're on their own thing, which I wonder is if that's part of the performance here. It's been shifted to a piano. Piano is additional. And I wasn't not going to talk about the vocals. Just so low. Actually, the more that I look at the moving lines, there's less and less rhythmic synergy. There's definitely an intended hit, but everybody's just slightly off. There is no perfection to it, which really helps sell the dreariness. Yeah, there's like 4 hits on that beat. I went to check the tempo again, and it's so hard to hit when they hit. First of all, it's just so slow. But nobody's in time. I don't actually know where the beat is, which is kind of fascinating that the song continues to move. It doesn't fall apart. So much of my education is just telling me, no, you gotta get on the beat. What are you guys doing? You know, it's funny. I think we're pretty close to double time here. Just a little under, like 75% increase. And it's still going to be such a low number. Oh, actually, it's a little over double. We're looking at 85. You know what's wild though is that the timing hasn't been tightened up with the increase in tempo. Now we're down to a 60. The only thought going through my head is this band needs a conductor so bad. They've certainly found quite a few ways to have this dreary melancholy to craft that in their chords. And I like how we do have a melodic idea over here on the right guitar. Those are different bells than we had the first time. That actually sounds like a church bell. The first set of bells we had at the intro were like the tall standing brass bells that you would use a mallet on. This feels like a very large handbell, like a super large handbell, which is why I'm thinking like a church bell. Yeah, we return back to the 35 of our intro, which is the bell comes back because we've returned to our intro. I bet you anything if I went and checked the intro's guitar line, it's identical. We actually did loop back to the beginning of the song. So yeah, that was a trip. Sorry I interrupted. That was a trip. I am fairly certain that's the slowest we've had on the channel. 35 is ridiculously slow. I think we only went down to 40 on the last track of our Gotta Go Slow week. I think it was a low 40, like 40, 42, something like that. 35 is, it's the slowest. And technically, we could probably make an argument that we hit 33 at points because of the time dilation, which is how I'm going to refer to it to have a bit of a positive spin. That's the first thing we got to talk about. Nothing is in time with each other. I kind of felt like our guitar and drums and piano and bass were all in time with each other at the beginning. I'd specifically singled out the bell and said that that was doing its own thing. But the more we got into this core part, the first section, the less and less things lined up. Like they all kind of came in on the downbeat, whereas the bells did not. The bells just did whatever they wanted. They were doing polyrhythm as far as I'm concerned, because it felt like they were in a pattern against the rest of the band for a while, and then they just weren't. They came in randomly. um, well, not randomly. Maybe random. I was going to say there seemed to be a pattern where we kept getting closer to the beat and then further away from the beat in fixed intervals, so it almost felt like it was polymetric. But that pattern, I can't say that it was consistent either, so I'm going to go with random. I think the bell person just hit it whenever they wanted. And they increased frequency at times too. We would sometimes get two hits back to back. I don't remember that being a thing at the beginning. But like I said, the more that I looked at the rest of the band, they all fit the pattern. They stayed in the 4/4. They stayed within the general tempo and the time signature, but they just couldn't land on the downbeat. For digital folks, it would be like saying there's no quantization. Quantization? The notes themselves have not been quantified so that they all land at the same time. Um, and it creates an atmosphere to the whole thing. Due to the tempo, there's a lethargy to all of this. Due to the atmosphere, there's a melancholy to all of this. It is funeral doom. This is what I was expecting. Dreary, slow, weighty music as if the person is so overcome with grief and sadness that they can barely walk forward, much less move on with life. They just, it's such a drag to exist. They accomplished this perfectly. And the lack of synchronization in attacks leans into this. We get the feeling that not only are they so incapable of even a simple idea as taking a step forward, but that when they do take that step forward, all of their body parts, the very fabric of their being exists in entropy. They can't even get all their muscles to work together properly. That's the kind of vibe it tells me. It's such a lethargy that things are beginning to fall apart. The song actually feels like it could fall apart at any time because the tempo is so loose, not just in the attacks and the timing of it all, but the fact that even looking towards the drummer who should be holding the tempo down, that's not happening. I said that we could probably make an argument we drop down to 33 or even 32 BPMs at times because that is what it becomes when we look at two specific notes. It does average out to 35 over the course of a bar, but the distance between each two hits changes. It is frequently in flux. And it also changes in flux between who you're listening to. The guitarist liked to rush a little bit. The drummer ended up dragging quite often. Um, it's it's remarkable to kind of hear the personalities at play. You can tell who wants to jump the gun and who doesn't, who's really trying to lean into the slowness of it all. And through this performance and the composition itself, it drives a very striking image of somebody so broken by grief. It does a phenomenal job of that, and I do not want to reduce that artistic impact at all. But every fiber of my being wanted things to line up. And it really makes me curious where the event happens, the desynchronization. Is it intentional? Because I will tell you, as a musician who has had timing drilled into them for decades, a little over a decade as far as uh, trumpet education goes, um, it is so difficult for me to get outside of a beat. It is so difficult to purposefully drag after having that drilled into you for so long that you must be on the beat. Almost every type of music out there requires this sort of precision. I've talked about it before, how having musicians who are out of time with each other can create muddiness in the attacks. That muddiness typically comes through in more standardized tempos. As we heard here, it wasn't really muddy, it was just fumbled, which aided in the theme of it all. It aided in the flavor of the song. But it would really take a lot for me to fight against that instinct of playing on the beat, of wanting to utilize a click track, of wanting my drummer to have a click track or just have an innate strong metronome. because even listening to this, I'm not playing it, and listening to it, I tell you, it was annoying. And this is where the divide between the critical and the casual lie. I totally appreciate it on the critical side. It works so well for driving the themes and elevating this to a work of art. Casually, I never want to hear anything like this again. It is so aggravating to listen to five people have no idea where the beat is. To have a rhythm section, your bass and your drummer, not have a strong sense of rhythm. It is infuriating. If any of this happened in a band I was in, I would lose my mind. Although that also leans against the fact that any band I would be in would probably not be Funeral Doom and would be aiming to have synergy. It's a completely different environment, and I totally appreciate that. But I was definitely torn in two here, listening, as I appreciated it and absolutely never wanted to hear anything like it at all. And I kept thinking, I have no idea why. Every other beat, I'd be like, they're gonna nail it this time. They got it. And then it would be the worst timing I've heard, where not even two instruments were at the same time, and as far as I'm feeling the beat, nobody hit it. And it tears me apart. I'm like, no! Get a click track, get a conductor, have your guitarist, pantomime the beat, have somebody directing this externally or within the band. Just, mm. I don't want to dig into that too much more. We're just going to move on, but I did want to showcase the schism there that I was experiencing because it's such a great decision to do, and I also hated it. Oh, so I meant to lean into this real quick. I wonder where the intentionality occurs. During Gotta Go Slow Week, I mentioned that that playing slow is difficult. You need somebody, like I just mentioned, to unify the band. You either need a drummer with a strong sense of time or anybody who is going to lay down the beat. It doesn't even necessarily need to be consistent. You just need somebody to designate where the beat is. Like I mentioned, it could be a guitarist. They just raise their guitar and bring it down, and everybody knows that that's where it is. Or have a conductor on the outside conducting this slow thing, probably in double time, just to keep consistency. Um, where even though it's slow, you would conduct the subdivisions, you would conduct the beats between the beats. Um, and that way it's easier to have consistency because you're moving your hands faster. Either way, the thing is that the irregularity in the timing, even if you tell your person with the worst rhythm to be the conductor, like in this case, the drummer. I honestly think the drummer just had the worst sense of rhythm in here. Have somebody doing it, and it erases the fluctuation feel. When you feel that everybody's out of time, it actually augments and strengthens the feeling that the distance between the beats are all different. If everybody's always in time, it's like a psychological thing. It's like an auditory illusion. You tend to stop seeing the difference in the timing, and it just feels like everybody's in time and the tempo's consistent. So, like I said, I wonder where it lies though. Is this a band that is just choosing not to have any consistency? This is something they aimed for. They are typically, in any other setting, a very tight group, but in this type of music, they purposefully drag or rush in order to have this disconnect. Or is this just so slow that it's very difficult for them to have that pure timing and they just run with it? They say, you know what, that's how we're going to play it then. That's our style. I'm curious. Now, aside from the timing, the next thing that really stands out to me is the consistency of theme, whether they are utilizing very few instruments with very limited writing, composition, and mostly emphasizing atmospheric ideas, like a very dreary guitar line and a death toll, a bell, uh, just very ominously ringing off to the side, or they're going full in with the full band, all playing dreary, melancholic music. They tend to find a way to keep this melancholy consistent throughout the song. It really only exists in three parts. We have our 35 BPM, our 80, 85, is that what I said? And then the 60s, something in the 60s. And then we return back to our intro to finish the track out. All three of these sections have a melancholic feel to it. The 85 BPM section, the one we hit in the middle, I think it was also the shortest, felt the least melancholic, and I think a lot of that's because of the tempo. 85 is actually a slow tempo in classical music. It's typically what we would give a slower piece. And that, I think that just goes to show just how slow 35 is and how contrast can warp our perception, because at 85 felt like we were running. And 85, typically when I play an 85 in any other song, I'm like, all right, this is gonna be a bit of a slower track. I got a hold of it though. And it's really interesting here. I was just like, man, this is moving. Feels like we're running over here. That was the only part though that really felt like it lightened up on the melancholy a little bit, but the music was still dreary. We kind of were booking a little bit. We had a bit of speed to it. The 60 though brought us back down to something that felt dreary. But like I said, no matter what the instrumentation is, the width of it, no matter how far they went into musicality versus atmosphere, no matter what speed we were at, they kept this dreary feeling, the melancholy throughout. I'm interested to dig into the lyrics and kind of pair all this together. I mean, it's funeral doom. I'm expecting something downtrodden. Um, Speaking of lyrics, vocals, man. We checked out, actually, Skepticism was the band, wasn't it? Let me look at this real quick. I think Skepticism was the slowest one we had on Gotta Go Slow Week. Oh, no, Skepticism. Oh, they did the Departure. I knew I recognized the name. Frowning was the one that just utterly slowed everything down. But I think Skepticism, I spoke about the vocals there as well, now that I'm remembering Departure a little bit. This dude's vocals are just it's so low. I just can't even wrap my mind around it. I don't think I have anything to add more than had last time. I'm curious how he accomplishes it, if he has a natural, deep voice. I don't know how, I mean, I guess all of it is false chord, so it doesn't matter what his speaking voice is, but still. And then if there's any effects being put on it, I'm not saying that he's using like a pitch corrector to make it low or anything like that, but is there anything like EQ, bring up the low end on the EQ to help emphasize it or something like that? It's such a low voice, and it goes so well with this because I can hear each individual pop in the fry, whereas like fry screaming tends to be a pretty quick wavelength, and the crackles all sort of come together to create that tone. But this is so slow that I can hear each individual crack in the fry texture, and that just adds into the slowness of it all. It also reminds me of Lurch from Addams Family. He speaks slow, he speaks low. I mean, that kind of idea just kind of comes into focus here with this type of vocals as well. It brings about that same imagery, and it's just mind-boggling. Now, musically, I think there's only one thing I want to touch on, because, like I said, to me, it's all about atmosphere, and some of that might just be that the melodies are so. It takes so long to hear a full melody that I don't see the relationship of every note within it. I felt the chordal movements. A lot of this was based off of two chord movements, tension, resolution, all of it working within the realm of melancholic sadness kind of vibes. I felt all of that. But there was one point that I really liked. We had the piano moving between a couple of chords, which was a unique aspect of the track on the left side, and our guitar had a melody line, I think. I don't know. It felt like it was holding out a lot of notes. Doesn't feel like a moving melody, but if this were at 80, 90, 100 BPMs, would this feel like a guitar riff? That's my question here. And I think it would. So I want to lean towards that. So we actually had a foundational idea and a melody, which is something I didn't feel in either of the other two sections. I really enjoyed this part because that, along with the vocals, which had a rhythmic component to it, um, and a textual component, kind of created the one moment that felt like a traditional song to me. Foundation, melody, vocals, texture, and rhythm in the drums. I'm really interested to take this and speed it up um, with some sort of software that would retain pitch. That's the important part. I just want to know what this would sound like faster. If I could hear riffage, if I could hear stronger aspects of melodic writing and the note relationships across melodies. You know, when it takes a minute to play six notes, I've kind of forgot what the first note sounded like to compare it to the last one. It's like when you hear a really long sentence and or like a really long, it takes like 2 minutes to read, like 3 lines of dialogue, and you're like, well, I forgot what this was at the beginning. I forgot what we were even talking about, kind of deal, because someone's speaking like a sloth. Um, that's kind of what's going on here. I'm forgetting the beginning of the sentence by the time we get to the end. So I guess we're going to hit some lyrics, a bit of on the shorter side here, but when you got a 12-minute song with 3 ideas in it, it's not really a lot to grasp onto. It really is the atmosphere of it all, and I think that's why people listen to Funeral Doom, is just sitting in that vibe, and that's what Funeral Doom does a fantastic job of. Also, I mean, I kind of made the same joke in my last video, but 12 minutes of music, 2 stanzas. Metal, man, pop music has like 2 minutes of music and a bucket load of lyrics. And then you get metal, it's the exact opposite. We'll just fill a ton of space with vibe, atmosphere, music. We'll get to the lyrics eventually. All right. Stream brought words and stream brought meanings. Interestingly, stream is capitalized both times here. Through its aether we seen all beings. Beauty revealed as cruelty, core of grief as death of desire. Stream flow in depth unmatched, crossed a statue with no hearing. March came colder than invited, crossed a realm of 2 endings. Stream to a sea had started turning. I wish I had any idea what was going on here. It needs more. We could use some articles in here. That'd be kind of nice. The stream brought words. It's a very rigid writing style. Simplified. It's removed articles. It's removed conjunctions. And through that, it kind of obscures meaning in a little bit. I wonder if this is, I don't know, the march and the stream. The march and stream. Oh, it's the march and stream. Maybe it hasn't removed articles. Maybe stream is a proper noun, a name for something. Stream brought words and brought meanings. Through its aether we are seen all beings. Beauty revealed as cruelty. Yeah, I got nothing. that light bulb clicking did not reveal anything. Like a small part of light in a giant dungeon. Yeah, now I can see the corner wall. It still doesn't help me in the maze. Those are my thoughts on Skepticism's The March and Stream. Let me know y'all's thoughts on this. If you enjoyed it, if you didn't, I had a few questions if you have answers for those, or if you just want to add on to what I stated or correct me on some stuff. Put your thoughts down in the comments. Above the comment section is a description box which has a link to Linktree. Takes you to this menu right here. Has links for everything related to the channel on it. You can support the channel in a variety of ways, find some of the communities around the channel like on Discord or Twitter, and a bunch of other things. Above the description box, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, checking out 2 more songs. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.